Hi, welcome to Friday Night Chats with Garage Geek. Hope you had a nice week. I did. I had Wednesday off, so that was really nice. But of course, that made Thursday and Friday difficult, but I can't complain about that. At the beginning of the week, I went to a record store near my home, Gimme Records, and I just bought a few things. So I bought this Nancy Wilson album. Now, it was a little bit expensive for what I would normally pay, so it was $8. But it's in such nice condition, and look at that gorgeous cover. I decided to splurge on it. I bought an album of Christmas music, Mexican music. Now, my husband said that this is probably naco, which means not very sophisticated, but I decided to give it a chance. Anyway, I bought two 45s. I bought Janet Jackson, What Have You Done For Me Lately? They were both $3. Olivia Newton-John's Please Mr. Please. So I also bought my husband a record, Boney M. It was a brand new record. I got that for him. So music pretty much out of the way. I mean, I listened to a bunch of interesting things. Like I've still been listening to this one, Over. Oops, that made everything bounce. Okay, so I've been listening to this a lot, and I'm going to talk about this more when I show off some books, right? Because this is an ongoing process for me, and like I said, I'll talk about it in a little bit. Okay, and so I read and reviewed two comic collections, Transmetropolitan, which I had kind of a bad reaction to one of the comics in the collection. But I am looking forward to reading the rest. So there are 5, and this is the first in the series. All right, so this is Transmetropolitan. I also read and reviewed The Fade Out, but I forgot to grab it. So, I mean, if you're interested in either one of these, of those, I mean, you can see my review. I also try to show a lot of the art when I do my reviews. I could talk about some of the movies I watched this week. So, if I'm a little off on my game, it's because I didn't sleep well last night. I can already tell, like, I'm just kind of off, right? I'm just like, a little bit of a zombie. I'm so sorry, right? I'm a little bit off because of my sleep patterns. So this week, I watched Hocus Pocus 2. Now, Hocus Pocus 2 is on Netflix, and I'm not a huge fan of the original. My husband is, and so he really wanted to watch it. And so I was down for it. It's not a bad movie. If you like the first one, then you'll like the second one. It's basically more the same. I basically spent the whole movie hoping Sarah Jessica Parker would say, amok, 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 and she finally did. So I was happy. I mean, that's my favorite part of the first movie. So that should tell you a lot. Like, I'm not a huge fan of those movies, but it was fun to revisit it. And it was also interesting for me because since that, no, I'm not wording that right. I've actually been to Salem. Now, before I saw the first movie, I hadn't been to Salem. Then I took a trip to Salem, and so now when they show Salem in the movie, I could kind of relate to it a little more. So that was another thing that was interesting for me. We also started watching The Muppets. I actually forget. That must be Disney Plus, yeah. So we started watching the Muppets movie, and I have to tell you that I fell asleep, not because it was boring. It's fun. I was tired that night. And the one thing I want to say about it is that I swear it's filmed in the Tower of Terror in California Adventure. Right, the Disney park. So, I mean, I haven't been there very much. I've only been there a couple of times, but it seems like that movie was filmed in that amusement park ride. I don't know. It's a building, so I don't know if anybody's seen it and can comment on that. It just looks like all the props that they're using, everything, everywhere they're going, it seems like it was filmed in that building where that ride is. I don't know if you've ever been on the Tower of Terror. I don't even know it's still there. So the Tower of the Terror is where you go through this whole building. As you're going through the line, they they make the line immersive, which is good. I mean, they have to, because the lines are so long. So you're weaving through the mansion, and then when you get on this ride, it basically, like, you get in a little car and it puts you up and then drops you. I don't know why I would ever get on one of those rides, right? I've done it a couple times, and every time I'm on it, I'm like, what the hell were you thinking right before they drop you, right? The worst is when they drop you a little bit, and then they bring you back up, and then they open up the giant windows to the entire park. They move you out, and then they drop you again. Like, they make you hang out and see the whole park before they drop you again. I don't know why I'm going off on this ride, but it's just a silly ride. Anyways, I think the movie was filmed there. So, my husband and I decided to watch some Mexican horror movies, right? So at the beginning of the week, we were like, let's watch, it's Halloween, the month of Halloween, so let's start watching some horror movies. And we decided, hey, let's watch some of the Mexican ones. So I looked up on the website, and I found Vulture. They had a list of famous Mexican movies, and he had some. And so this whole week we've been watching some of these old Mexican movies from the 50s and 60s that are horror based. And so I'm going to talk about a few of them, and I'm actually going to have some, what do you call it? Visual aids. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about them in the order that we saw them. But the first one was, we actually watched The Tomb of the Vampire, or The Vampire's Coffin. It has both names. In Spanish, it's El Ataúd del Vampiro. And that was from 1958. And after we were watching, I'm like, this is part 2. There has to be another one, right? Because it just starts and all the characters are going on. I'm like, okay. And so, yeah, we looked, and there was another one that was from a year before, 1957, called The Vampire. And so we ended up watching them just out of order. It doesn't matter. So another thing I want to say about all these movies, right? They're not readily available. So you, on DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, it's hard to find them. And so we were watching them off YouTube and Tubi. And so they're free, right? You just have to watch some commercials. Some of the problems are that some of the movies that I'm going to talk about have English subtitles. Some have Spanish subtitles, so you could read the Spanish while you're listening to it. And some have neither. So you're just kind of... I was just like, whatever happens, these are horror movies. They're not very deep, right? So I'm watching them more for the atmosphere. And so what if I don't understand every single nuance going on, right? It's like, okay, you're going to get bit. Okay, we're going to wait 3 nights. I mean, they're not that deep, so whatever. So I'm just saying that even though there might be a language barrier, you could still try some of these movies. And there are actually a couple of them that had English subtitles. So I'm going to show you some scenes from The Vampire. So it's my you can see all the fingerprints on my iPad. Okay, and then you can see me too reflected. There I am. Anyways, so this is the actor Roman German, one of those two. And so that's him as the vampire. And why I love to watch these old movies is for the atmosphere. I mean, look at, if you could see this, look at that courtyard. It's a Spanish thing. He's standing there, and in a second, he's going to transform into a bat and fly at the camera. But you can see all the mist hanging, and so that's why I watch these movies. Like the first scene when they go in, there's an arch. It's all in black, and in the background is the area, and it's all in mist. And so that's why you watch these things, for the atmosphere. That's why I do. And what I was really surprised is a lot of these movies have some really good music, background music in them. So anyways, this is, here's his name, German Robles. Anyways, I just want to show you a couple pictures. Like here he is, he's getting ready to bite. Now, what I'm going to say that I did not know, this is really cool. This is the first time that vampires used fangs in movies. They started that, and it became common afterwards. I did not know that. That is a pretty cool fact. First time. So there you go. First time seeing fangs on a vampire. And when you think about it, when you think about the original Dracula, he didn't have fangs. So they actually did a lot of innovations with these movies, but some of the things that they did in this movie, these movies, that didn't catch on. Number one, in the first movie, he seems to hypnotize with his eyes, but in the second movie, he uses this medallion to hypnotize people. So he stands there in front of them and he hypnotizes them like that. Another thing that these vampires would do is that they would just disappear and reappear wherever they wanted, which that never really caught on. That's something that vampires don't really do. So that was an interesting aspect in these movies. Another thing is these vampires were kind of inept, because he would go up on the victim and he wouldn't hypnotize her, and she'd just start screaming, and he would have to like fight with her, and it was more like battling a beast. And that was really weird, because then like the whole household would come running and you would go hungry. So I didn't think he was a very, he was kind of inept as a vampire if you can't keep your prey quiet so that you could suck the blood. But I'm telling you, these movies are fun and important for horror aficionados, because there's so many details and things like this that become innovative. So a couple of the other movies we watched, one of his favorite movies from when he was a kid, he said it used to scare him so much, was in English, Even the Wind is Afraid. So Even the Wind is Afraid is called in Spanish Hasta el viento tiene miedo. So this is a movie poster for it. And this was made later. This was made from 1968. So that was the year I was born. This movie is all atmosphere. And so you're going to get a lot of wind, a lot of, like lightning, wind at night. People are walking around outside, hypnotized in the wind. You're going to get possessions, and a lot of there's like people up in towers. I should just say it's really gothic, and that's true. This movie has all those gothic touches, which makes it so good. Now, there's one scene in this movie that you have to watch it. So basically, there's all these girls at a Catholic boarding school, and they're being punished, and so they have to stay there during vacation. And there's one girl there who stays there because she doesn't have family, and she's the one who always tells on them. And so these girls just gang up on this other girl, right? And so I think I have the pictures for that. So at one scene, they like gang up on this girl and they like rip all her clothes off. And she's sitting there. She obviously in the movie, she still has her nightie on, but they kind of like rip all her clothes off. And then they start dancing, and this one girl does a striptease dance. And it's the funniest. I mean, it's from the 60s, right? You have to see this. It's hysterical the way she dances like this. Please Google it if you can. Hasta el viento tiene miedo. Even the Wind is Afraid. Wow. Okay, look. They even show her on the movie picture. Like, there she is doing her. That's her doing her striptease right there. It's pretty funny. So I'm hoping I can show you. Wait, I think I can show you some of the pictures where she's. Yes, there she is, doing her striptease. I'm gonna blow that up for you. Look at her. She's doing her striptease. But this is nothing. You actually have to see this. Oh no, I think they even show a picture where that's where they rip the girl's clothes off. So basically, they're going for that titillation and horror. Right? Good stuff. You got to watch it. The next movie that we watched was actually had a lot of the same actors. This girl who did the striptease, she's in this movie too, and I think it was the same director. It was from 1 year later. It was called Il Libro di Piedra, which is the Book of Stone, right? So here is the movie poster for that one. So this is also one of these gothic movies. Like, there's one scene in it that reminded me of Exorcist 2. Like, they're driving, and then the guy is driving, and then he sees the villain from the movie, the ghost, the devil, and then has a car crash. And like that same thing happened, almost the same thing in Exorcist 2, I believe. Anyway, so it's basically about this. I won't give much away. I mean, it's a silly horror movie, whatever. But there's a stone statue that is on the grounds of this really palace. It's like a really big house that this family moves into. And the girl, the young daughter, starts seeing an imaginary friend named Hugo, which is, when you actually find out the story of Hugo, it's the best thing in the whole movie, because it's all atmosphere and old horror movies. You're not going to get much out of them except for that atmosphere. But the story of what happens to the boy who's on the statue is pretty cool. I don't want to give away the whole movie, but just that little part, the history of the statue itself, was interesting. But anyways, so they go through this, like, is it imaginary? Is it a ghost? Whatever. So, old horror movie from Mexico. Let's see. And then last night we watched another one called Pantano. If I don't say this right, my husband gets mad. He's corrected me about 5 times. It's Pantano, I think, not Pantano. Pantano de los Animos. And it basically means the Swamp of Lost Souls. Now that sounds like an amazing title, right? That's what we thought. Okay, the Swamp of Lost Souls. And this movie starts out so cool. So there's the first shot. There's all these people along like a stone embankment. I don't know how to, a concrete embankment that the water goes up to. So they're just lined up. And then they show this boat coming, and this boat has a coffin on it. And that's how it starts. It's like really neat. And then another scene that comes very soon after that is there's a skull in the foreground. And then there's this winding river, and the boat comes around with that skull around the muddy river, and it really starts out cool. And then supposedly there's a plague, and there's missing bodies. And the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm in for a good movie. Nope. It went downhill fast. It was bad. Okay, this movie did not know what it wanted to be. So this movie ended up being like a Lone Ranger movie. So we have this hero fighting bad guys, and it became a comedy. He had a sidekick that was cracking jokes. And then the monster, which I don't mind silly monsters. So basically it was a Creature of the Black Lagoon monster, right? Who was literally in a suit. Okay, that's all I have to say. But I don't mind cheesy monsters, but it wasn't scary. It went from this really cool gothic opening to this cheesy, I don't know, Lone Ranger. It was bad. And it did have nice music, though. So I don't recommend that unless you want to just be confused, like, what kind of movie is this? And yeah, skip that one. So, El Pantano de los Animas. So I've had an interesting week. I'm definitely not stopping. I'm going to continue watching these older horror movies because, I watch a lot of the same movies every year. So I was about ready to pull out my Frankenstein and I will. I usually watch 2 or 3 of them at least a year within those series. I pick, there's still quite a few of them I haven't seen, because for each one of them there's like 4 or 5. Like for the Mummy, there's about 4 of them, and for Dracula, there's about 4 or 5. There's a whole bunch. And so I still, even my age, I haven't seen them all, so I, pull them out and watch a couple each year. So I'll get to that. So that's what I watched. Wow, I can't believe it's already 20 minutes. I need to get a move on. So the next thing I want to talk about is the books. And that's pretty much it, right? So I'm going to talk about the Booker Prize. So it's kind of Booker season. The Booker long list was published a while ago. So here's the list of books, right, if you could see it. So this is a short list. It starts off with the long list, and then it goes into the short list. So we already have the short list, which is, these are the books nominated this year. Right? And so it might be backwards. So as of now, I've only read this one, which I talked about last week. And right now I'm almost done with one of the long listed books, and I have 3 more of the long listed in my audio queue. The problem with some of these books is I listen to them in the car on the way to work, and for some reason they've started a new policy where they have skip the line books. So if you put a book in your queue and someone is reading something else, they can skip it so someone else can get it, and then it'll go right back to them. But when that happens, I only get a week. And so, if it's a 10-hour book, and you only got a week. So good thing is that I'm so used to listening to audiobooks that I listen to them double speed. So if it's a 10-hour book, I get it done in 5. So that's a real benefit for me. So anyways, I talked about Elizabeth Stroud and what was the first one called? Well, the second one is O. William, which is basically part 2 of the book that I talked about before. But she's a really interesting writer. Okay, I'm messing this up. Her name is Elizabeth Stroud, and she wrote the book O. William, and I really enjoyed it. So it's part 2 of, I guess there's going to be another one. And each book, she gives more details about her family life. And I'm looking forward to a third one because I think there's going to be more questions that are answered. And I think her strong suit as a writer is she's really good at creating these characters that you have interest in. So she did it with Olive, is that it? Olive Kittredge? Olivia Kittredge? Anyways, that's another good book. I mentioned that. Okay, last time as well. Hey, that's enough. So another one that I'm almost done with is called Trust. And this book is really interesting. It didn't make the short list, but it's still a very good book. So this one is by Hernan Diaz. And so far, there have been 3 different parts. I still have 2.5 hours to go in the book. But the first part is third person. And then the second part was like a journal. And then the third part is first person from different points of view, but all about the same thing. And the title is Trust, and it plays with the meaning of the word trust. So trust has to do with money. It takes place in the financial world. It has to do with trust. Can we trust historians and people who write about history? Can we trust people who tell their stories to historians? So there's that idea, right, of history is written by the victors. And so here we get some insight onto some of the people who are often left behind, who are, for example, the wives of some of these really famous people that they're talking about. Normally they're just background characters, but it gets you to think about these people in a different way, right? And so basically I could go on about this book, about what each part is doing and how they're tied together, but I don't want to do that. It's a very good book. So if you don't know about the Booker Prize, it's out of England. It's a really interesting prize. So we have in the United States the, I don't want to be patronizing, but we have the Pulitzer Prize. I always think that the Booker Prize is it's just a better prize because it really focuses on style and innovations in style. And it will reward books that try to do things differently. Whereas the Pulitzer Prize is usually, not always, it's more appealing to the mass, and that's not always a bad thing, but it doesn't always go to the most deserving, I feel. Okay, so, I mean, I don't mean to put the Pulitzer Prize down. I just think the Booker Prize is a better prize. It's more interesting for me. So, I highly recommend that you check out one of these books, one or more. I'm so looking forward to. I usually don't get through all of them before the prize is announced. You know, it all depends on availability. Some of them aren't even. For example, this weird, the treacle. That's a British term, right? Treacle, the treacle worker. That one isn't really published here yet. So sometimes the ones, some of these books we have to wait a while for. All right, so let's talk about one of the YouTubers I watch called Book Pilled. He was talking about some of his favorite science fiction books, and he mentioned 2 books, and so many people mention these books, and I just said, you know what? This is shocking that you've never read them. So number 1, get ready to gasp. I've never read Frankenstein. I know, it's shocking, right? I've never read it. And so he recommended the 1818 text, which was more, I guess, visceral. I guess she tamed it for the later edition. She took out some things. And then I've never read Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. And so I bit the bullet and I went ahead and bought these. And I hope that I can read these, at least this one, by the end of the month for Halloween. I want to read that. Okay, then I've been reading this book, The Haunted Looking Glass, which is all older ghost stories. I'm actually going to do a video on this because what I want to do is I want to focus on Edward Gorey's art and kind of talk over it, like what the story is about, not giving anything away. I might read like a paragraph just to give the author's style and focus on the art, because each one of these stories is introduced with an art piece. So that's something I'm working on now. I'm halfway through it, so I'm about halfway done. And then I guess I'll end with this. Ooh, look at this big old thing. Okay, so starting with the argument. The argument was a CD by, oh my gosh, I'm blurring. Let's just say there was a CD called The Argument that was about Paradise Lost. Okay, we got it. So then T-Cat's Deep Vinyl Tracks. I'm getting better. I knew that without having to look it up. He recommended this, and I'm still listening to it. And so this is The Marriage of Heaven and Hell by William Blake. And so I went ahead and I got the Gustave Doré drawings that went along with Paradise Lost, and I'm still like not done with Paradise Lost. But I wanted the artwork to match this. And so I was looking online. I just went ahead and bought his collected art. It's for all of his illuminated manuscripts, illuminated books. And so I'm actually gonna do a video that encompasses the music of this, the art that goes with the marriage of heaven, hell, the marriage of heaven and hell, and I guess, yeah, and discuss it. Now, it's super short. The marriage of heaven and hell is super short, so the manuscript is here, right? Everything written on there is so difficult to read, so it's all in the back of the book. But it's so small, so I went ahead and I looked up the Gutenberg, the free website, and I just read it there. Very quick read, right? I just read it just to get through it, just to see what it was like. And boy, is it strange. Okay, you're going to have dragons, and you're going to have cosmic spiders. You're going to have all this weird stuff. And it's divided into these weird different parts. There's a poem at the beginning that's called the argument, and then they have all these basically like aphorisms, all these sayings. It's just line after line after line of all these sayings, and they're really interesting. And then you get these paragraph prose pieces that feel like you're reading an answer to Revelations. So when I make this video, there's some really, really interesting ideas. He's answering a whole bunch of things, right? So it's Blake. It's weird. So I'm enjoying going on this journey with, the music, the art, the text. And so I'm going to stop there because I know I've been rambling. Now, I'm going to apologize. If you've been watching this far, thank you. I think this is probably one of my weirdest episodes. I'm just tired. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I only got like 5 hours of sleep. And so I'm just kind of like, I think if I had done this tomorrow, this would have been more succinct, clear. My thought processes wouldn't be so rambling. But it happens. So I want to thank you. I'm going to end this by, there's a new Hellraiser. It's on Hulu, and I'm going to watch that tonight. I don't care how tired I am. I'm going to watch that movie tonight. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's good. So Hellraiser tonight. I'm going to take a break from the Mexican horror cinema of the 50s and 60s and watch a brand new movie. So anyways, thank you so much. Please leave comments. I love hearing what you think. I love reading what you think and responding to them. So again, thank you so much for joining me on my Friday night chat.